Hello! Gosh, I feel like it's been a long time since I've done a little live, and I am really excited to be doing it. I wish it was a bit sunnier outside. It's a little bit dark in here, but I know that here, at least in Vancouver, hey Carrie, well thanks for joining us. So, hey guys. So I'm about 2 weeks from packing lunches here. And I definitely feel like I have to get myself psyched up for it. Hey Danielle, if you are the same, drop me a note in the comments. Are you like, no lunches? I've totally got this. Maybe you can give us some tips. But if you are like me and you're feeling like you need a little psyching up about packing healthy lunches, that's what this live is all about. We're gonna try and keep it. Hey Amanda, thanks for joining us. Welcome. For those of you, I feel like you guys all know me, but let me say hello in case you haven't done one of my lives. Hi, Desiree Nielsen, registered dietitian. And also I'm gonna pop this in my IGTV as well, because we'll probably go a little bit longer than I know you can join us live. And I wanna make sure that we get everything in, because yesterday I put out a Q&A and I got a ton of questions. I would say the vast majority of the questions were around sort of like navigating nut-free lunches plus other allergies. But then also like, what do you do for proteins? How do you make it fun? Like, what if my kids don't eat their lunch at all? There's nothing worse than them getting home at the end of the day and they're cranky and you open their lunchbox and you're like, oh, that's why you're cranky. Because you didn't eat your lunch, and then you feel really bad for their teacher because you know they've probably been a mess all afternoon. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff. If you have questions, I'm a little bit further from my screen, but I think I can like squint and see the questions. So if questions come up live, go ahead. I will try and add those too. Otherwise, you can just drop them in the comments when I put this up on IGTV. I also want to say a very big thank you. The reason why I'm doing this live is because we are sponsored by Silver Hills Sprouted Grain Breads. 100% my favorite everyday bread. My kids have been raised on this bread. So this is the bread that we have in our house. This is what my kids have grown up eating. And I really appreciate that because as a parent, you know that sometimes it can be hard to get everything you would like to into your children. And it's a really simple swap. So if you go from like your sort of standard sandwich bread into Silver Hills sprouted grain breads, you're getting more protein. We're gonna talk about protein, particularly how much protein kids needs, because I know there's a lot of questions about that. And then way more fiber for their little tummies. And so it's just this sort of like no-brainer swap so that their like everyday sandwich is even more nutrient dense. So love them, thanks Silver Hills. And we are going to get into it. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about, and I've also done a post, this week's blog post goes into a little bit more detail on some of these topics, so you can check it out at desireerd.com if you have more questions or want more lunch ideas. So let's start about what a balanced lunch actually looks like, because I think there's a lot of concern from parents, and even sometimes like I push off the like lunch today. I was like, ooh, was that an okay lunch today? The first thing to remember is that your kids are super resilient. I don't know if you grew up like I grew up, but like there was like a lot of just like mac and cheese and Lunchables in my childhood. And look at me, I'm healthy. So we have to remember that our kids' bodies are really resilient. As parents, of course, we want to do our best to get these nutrient-dense plant foods in. But if every once in a while your lunch doesn't like look like a balanced lunch, don't worry. It's what we do day in and day out over time that really moves the needle. So when I think about making a balanced lunch for my kids, the first thing I think about is going back to that like old school plant method, which honestly is just so easy because I don't want to count calories. I don't want to count protein grams. I don't want to count anything. It really sucks the joy out of eating. So instead I look at a plate. And the best, most evidence-based guidelines is that when you look down at your plate, half of that plate is going to be filled with fruits and vegetables. A quarter of that plate is going to be filled with whole grains. And then a quarter of that plate is going to be filled with proteins. So if you've got a lunch container, what does that actually look like? Typically what I try and do, and this can vary, so usually sort of like a whole grain protein thing is gonna go in this spot. And then I'm going to put 2 to 3 fruits or vegetables into my lunch container. And then if maybe there wasn't a protein here, then a protein can go here. If there weren't enough whole grains here, whole grains can go here. So I thought I would sort of start by like packing a little lunch, because I think it'll give us like a nice context for what we're doing here. So one of the biggest questions that I got, besides what does a balanced lunch look like, is how do you navigate allergies? So most of us are sending our kids to nut-free schools, and I am plant-based. My kids are not exclusively plant-based, but the vast majority of their lunches that I pack are. So how do you navigate a nut-free school if you're plant-based, or even if you're not, if you're just used to using a lot of nuts? Like we use a lot of nuts in our home cooking, particularly when I'm doing stuff like baking. So what do you actually put in there to get the protein in? So I've got like so much stuff. You can't fully see my counter, but it's packed with stuff just in case. So I wanted to cover sort of like the protein items first. And we'll start, since I talked about baking, I baked some like breakfast cookie style cookies. I also have some muffins made with whole grain flour as a snack. You can sneak more protein into those snacks by using hemp. So most sort of quick bread-y type things like cookies or muffins, you can take a half a cup of that flour out and replace it with a half a cup of hemp hearts. Hemp hearts have roughly 10 grams of plant-based protein per 3 tablespoons. So in addition to the whole grains in that snack, you now have a little bit of extra protein and honestly omega-3s, because omega-3s are really important for little brains too. So it's a great way to sneak protein in without it being like a protein food. So that is a great option. I know lots of you asked about snacks that are low effort, because of course this you have to bake. Don't forget about your freezer. So if you're like, I'm probably only gonna bake something like once a month, well, bake up a big batch, make sure it's tightly wrapped, pop it in the freezer, and then every week you can bring some out. Or you can do one week, have them in the freezer, get something else the next week, and then have it the next week again. So use your freezer, think about batch prepping, particularly for home baking, because I know not all of us can like home bake a bunch of stuff for lunches. It's really not as realistic. For some people it's super realistic because that's their like chill time, but if you're like me and you're like blah, chaos all the time, particularly Sunday nights as you're getting ready for the school week, then like embrace when you can do it, make a double, triple batch, pop it in the freezer, and then every once in a while you can pull out that homemade stuff. The other thing while we're talking about proteins that I should probably mention is how much protein do kids need? Because it's way less than you might think. So I wrote this down because when I'm rambling, I always make mistakes. So 1 to 3, so if you're packing a preschool lunch, 1 to 3-year-olds only need 13 grams of protein a day. It's really low. Like you're gonna get that 2 slices of sprouted grain breads, if you could get that into their little tummies, that's already about 12 grams. So think about it, like 1 slice of sprouted grain bread at a roughly 6 grams of protein is almost half their protein for the day. So I got you, parents, you're doing fine. So 4 to 8 years old, it's gonna go up a little bit more. It is 19 grams of protein, but again, still really not a huge amount. We're talking like a slice of sprouted grain bread, a half a cup of lentils, you know, maybe a bunch of hemp in one of their muffins, and then with the other little bits sprinkled around the day, like maybe some seed butters, that kind of thing, you're gonna go well over 19 grams and your kids are gonna be well nourished. And then finally, I'll leave the 9 to 13-year-olds because I've got one of those in my house. I don't know how I have a tween, how that's even possible, but I do. They need 34 grams of protein a day. My child definitely gets at least double this over the course of a normal day because also they have quite huge appetites. So we don't have to worry about putting large volumes of protein-dense foods in their plates. So yes, the hemp hearts and the muffins work. Yes, things like hummus works. Chickpeas, legumes, particularly if you're trying to navigate those proteins without nuts. Chickpeas are one of my fave sort of like proteins that are really, really versatile because you can do a bunch of different things with them. You can roast them and they can be for snack time, so they can go in the little snack time section. You can mash them with a little bit of vegan mayo, some pickles, whatever you like to put in your tuna, and make a chickpea tuna sandwich. You've got your hummus, which can go on a sandwich, or it can be in a snack style lunch. So you could cut pita or sprouted grain bread or tortillas and then have them sort of dip or spread the hummus on. So there's lots of ways that you can get that chickpea in. The other thing that I don't want you to forget about is tofu and tempeh. So if you're not soy allergic, because we had a couple people mention that they were soy allergic, but if you're not, it's a really overlooked protein in the lunchbox. So if you have access to it, because I know here in Vancouver, it's been a little bit hard to get your hands on, smoked tofu, you slice it like cheese, and it can go with whole grain crackers. It can go in the sandwich as like the cheese in the sandwich. You can also pan fry tofu, and my kids love tofu. I think it's their parents who are often more skittish about tofu than the kids. They will eat it straight up, but one of the most basic preparations of tofu that my kids love is I take a block and I cut it into 4 equal squares. I pan fry it with a little salt and pepper, and that makes a really nice sandwich filling on its own. Or you can cut it up into like little fingers that, again, they can dip in a favorite dip of theirs. Little finger foods like that are really wonderful. Tempeh sort of bacon strips make another, again, really awesome sandwich filling, or something that they can eat in sort of a snack style lunch. So there are so many ways to get protein on your plate, and your kids need a lot less protein than you might think. So not to worry. All right, what did we want to talk about next? Okay, especially because I mentioned the snack style lunch. This is going to be the perfect opportunity to talk about kids who say that they don't have time to eat or feel that they're too busy to eat, because my kids will often come home and say, I didn't have time to eat. And by that, they mean I was so excited that I was allowed to talk with my friends that I like sort of gabbed with my friends all lunch hour, and then they booted us outside and I forgot to eat. If you find that that's the case, a snack style lunch can be really fun. So making sure that you're not serving whole fruits and vegetables, but everything is sliced up so they can take it bit by bit, so that they can eat things in their recess time, perhaps, or they can just sort of like chat and snack, and it's usually a little bit easier. How do you turn a sandwich into that? I love this idea of doing skewers. And so if your kids love cinnamon and sugar toast, you can make a piece of cinnamon toast, a little bit of vegan butter, a little bit of cinnamon, a little sprinkling of cane sugar, cut it up into squares, and you can stack skewers, bread, and then like a little piece of grape or apples or whatever they love, and you can make these cute like little skewers, which sort of leads me into another big thing that sort of came up as a theme when I was talking to everyone, which is like, how do you make things that are easy but still exciting? Because this is the thing, right? Like, it's a huge thing that we have to do every day, so we really want to make it as easy as possible. One of my best tips for that is to vary up format and type. So if your kids have a favorite sandwich that they love, maybe it is, okay, I'm gonna say a really adult sandwich, but this is just an example anyways. Maybe it's like a vegan cream cheese with like cucumber, and they love that sandwich, but they're like, oh, I've had that sandwich a lot. Well, you can make skewers out of it. That's one really easy way. You can turn it into a wrap. You can serve it on a bagel. All those little things, so that when they open up their lunch and they're like, oh, it looks different. Sometimes that's all they need to sort of get that sort of sense of like fun or surprise that's going to really encourage them to eat their lunch. The other thing that I was like very pleased with myself about was using my waffle iron to make a sandwich. So I want to show you just this really simple sandwich that I make, and then we'll start sort of like adding everything into a lunchbox. It's a pizza sandwich, because like, who doesn't like pizza? I know I do. I made one ahead of time, and I've really had to work hard to stop myself from eating it. And I have to say, when I developed this recipe, and this is a really big thing with my oldest, they came into the kitchen and instantly they were like, ooh, what's that? And I was like, it's a pizza sandwich. And they were like, pizza sandwich? Amazing. And like, can I have it? And gobbled it up. So what you want to do is take 2 slices of your sprouted grain bread. Can you see this? Here, we'll move this bag so that we've got a little bit there. take your favorite pizza sauce. Like when I say easy, this is easy. You don't have to really prep too much ahead of time. It's almost just like making a PB&J sandwich, except it's pizza. So you're gonna put some pizza sauce on both sides of the bread. Get your favorite kind of like melty vegan cheese. And then some veggie pepperonis. If you can like get some veggies into the sandwich that your kids are into, amazing, but otherwise we're just gonna put veggies on the side of this meal. So that is literally it. Top it, and then you can put it right depending on what kind of waffle iron you have. So I have one that is actually 4 squares. I know if you have the round one, it'll be a little bit different, but I think still fun. So you just put it right on a preheated waffle iron, and you're going to close it. And then what you'll find is you're turning it into a panini press. So what you're gonna need to do is just some really gentle but firm pressure, and it won't take long for the waffle iron to sort of like press it down, and then you can walk away. And what you come up with is a sandwich that looks like a waffle, which is so, like you're making the sandwich anyways, all you need to do is preheat that, and it's a really great way to bust boredom. And then you got something delicious. And you could turn that into, Silver Hills also has these really great wraps. They have bagels. So again, if like that pizza idea flies, put it into your rotation 3 weeks from now, but as a wrap. Put it into your rotation 3 weeks from then, but like do like a bagel. So it's those tiny little shifts that really, really help. If you're looking for other ideas like that, like I said, the blog post, so the reminder about the pizza waffle sandwich idea is on my blog post, DesireeRD.com. But then we're also going to talk about how to build the rest of this. One of the biggest things I find, particularly for getting kids to eat, and goes for every meal. Oh, thanks, Dominique. I hope your kids like the pizza sandwich. I hope you like the pizza sandwich. Honestly, I'm gonna eat that for my lunch after this. So, children and parents alike. So the other thing that can sort of come is like a little bit of fatigue and boredom just around the other stuff that goes, especially if you're like, okay, so always 2 fruit, always like 1 veg, or 2 veg, 1 fruit, and then like a something else. Get your kids involved. This goes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So if you find that you have some challenges or some struggles around meal times, one of the things that's really important to come back to is something called the division of responsibility. So as a parent or caregiver, you decide when meals are served, where meals are served, and what is served. Ideally, keeping in mind at least one thing that they like. So you don't have to, you're like, all my kid will eat is like veggie chicken nuggets. So that's not your whole meal, but you put like some veggie chicken nuggets and then some fruits and vegetables you want them to try, or maybe a pasta or whatever. But it is up to your child to decide how much and what they choose to eat out of what is served. And that's really, really critical. So in terms of getting more buy-in from your kids, get them involved a little bit. Obviously, like Tuesday morning at 7:45 is not the time. It's gonna stress you all out. But like on a Saturday, if maybe you're making your grocery list and thinking about what to do for groceries, be like, okay, so lunches this week, like what was up? Age appropriate, of course. You're like, I saw you ate a lot of them. Like, was that really yummy? Should I keep that in the rotation? Or like, I saw that you didn't eat a lot of them. Like, what would you change about it? Like, how would you make this something that you love more? And start to get their feedback and have those conversations, particularly with my oldest who just turned 11. Like, this is very much a conversation that we can have, and they're gonna start making their own lunches very soon. What do you do if they don't eat much but then are hungry soon after? So I can't take credit for this. I have an amazing friend and colleague, Sarah Remmer, who's also a dietitian and who is like a legit, like, you know, kid expert. So one of the things that she taught me is that you can close, along with choosing when food is served, where and what, it is the when. So at mealtime, we don't push. We're like, okay, if your tummy says you're full, great. Just to let you know, the kitchen closes after lunch, after dinner, whatever the mealtime is. So if you're hungry, I'll leave this meal here for you and you can totally like snack. Maybe Sarah will be like, no, Desiree, don't let them snack, but that's what I do. That's how I interpret that advice. So I was like, your meal is here, totally fine. If you are not hungry right now, no biggie. But if you're hungry 20 minutes later, this is the food that's going to be available to you. And that's what I find works best for my family. That may not be the official advice, FYI, but that's what works for us. So same thing with lunches, in all honesty. Anything that is sort of safe after school. If they came home from school starving, the first thing I say is, let's look at your lunchbox. Oh, you ate most of your lunch, or the thing that's left is like really wilted and like not good to eat anymore. Be like, okay, it's snack time. But if there's a bunch of stuff there and like the lunch boxes stay pretty cool, it's looking really good, I'd be like, look at all of these amazing snacks you have to choose from for snack time. So that's a really big thing in this house. That's how we navigate it. Again, speaking more strongly as a parent than as a dietitian in this standpoint, but that's what works for us. And so maybe it will work for you, maybe it won't. So let's talk about variety and the fruits and veg and the other things. And I want to make sure, okay, perfect, great. Couple things I wanted to mention on No Busy, but I'll come back to it. Seasonality is really your biggest friend here when it comes to varying fruits and vegetables, particularly because what's in season is also going to be the most affordable. So like early in the season, blueberries were really expensive. We weren't buying a lot of blueberries. I just went to the store and they were like $1.99 a pound. I was like, boom, okay. So now we're putting blueberries in. And so they're going to look, they're going to get blueberries. They're going to be like, this is amazing. Like, we haven't had blueberries in a couple of weeks. This is really awesome. The other thing, so I do the same thing with fruits and vegetables. We actually grow some fruits and vegetables in terms of getting kids involved. Like these are sun golds from our garden and the kids love them. The idea that they can go and like out to the garden and like pick some food that's right there and they helped maybe like put in the seeds or they helped pick it really does increase their sort of like buy-in for the meal. The other thing is do some things that are a bit wild. This, how close can we get? This is a cucamelon. We also grew these. You're not always gonna see these at most supermarkets, maybe sort of more like local co-op style supermarkets or the farmer's market. If you can grow something wild or if you've got the budget to like get something fun from the supermarket, my kids love cucumber. I mean, they look like tiny watermelons. They taste like slightly tart cucumbers. You put something like this in their lunch and they really, really love it. And it's really sort of exciting to them. And then I always try and do something that's extras. This will be saved, Melissa. Yeah, I'm going to put it on IGTV. It'll take me a little while to get it up, but I'll let you know in my stories when it goes to IGTV because I know not everyone can sort of like stop and stay. Another way that you can get kids involved, my kids also love snap peas. Like they can fully eat like a pound of snap peas in a few days. Is once they've sort of told you their favorite fruits and veggies, when you can, to get those at the store, and that, well, they're called chibar. Ooh, where are they called chibar? I presume that's the like cucamelon, or I've also heard Mexican sour gherkins too. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, that's really cool. I love learning that. So in the morning or on Sundays, because what we do in our house is we choose one menu for the week. That's really helped. So like the main dish, like pizza sandwiches, it's like this week is pizza sandwiches, and then we'll like give them some options around fruits and veggies. So on Tuesday morning, I might say, okay, veggie, do you want snap peas, cucamelons, or carrots? Because I have those three on hand. And then they'll say carrots. But tomorrow they might say cucamelons. That tiny little bit of autonomy really, really helps. Oh, in Northern India. Thank you so much for telling us that. That's amazing. And now I know more about the origin of these because I've only heard Mexican sour gherkins, so I presumed that was the origin. Awesome. Okay, so you can give them a little bit, same thing with fruits. Do you want blueberries or do you want plums? That tiny little bit of autonomy really will help. And then what are some good, because they were asked for like low effort snacks. This is so individual for your kids. Really great example. These are nori wraps. So these are rice crackers wrapped in nori seaweed. My oldest loves these. I have to hold the bag back because they'll like eat them all. I have to be like, but that was for your lunch. So if I put these in their lunch, those are great. Some kids love roasted chickpeas. Some kids love, there's roasted lentils you can buy as well. Others don't. Some kids are like big dippers. So if you put like a little bit of guacamole or hummus in a little container with some like whole grain crackers or some like bread fingers that they can dip. They will love that for a snack. Roasted seaweed is always big. The thing about roasted seaweed is it's fun. It's not super filling, so definitely something to add as an additional snack when the main is quite filling that day. If your kids like dried fruit, the bag of nori wraps, yeah, it's just like a generic, it's like Dandy Pack. That's what it looks like plain rice crackers as well. Like my youngest doesn't like the nori maki, like she's not into seaweed yet. But she likes just like the plain rice crackers because they're really crunchy and they're a bit salty. So that's a lot of fun. If they're into dried fruit, you're welcome, Dominique. Dried fruit is always really lovely. If they like sour candies, I don't even think you can see, this just looks like, oh, you can sort of see the like little crystals. These are sour cranberries. So they're dried cranberries covered in like the sour stuff, which is really amazing. Also, there's some like little like vegan like gummy bears, a little something, you know, every once in a while. You can totally do all of that. Funny, there's like someone knocking at the door. I'm like, okay, sorry, doing Instagram Live. So I'll show you the like sort of like lunch that I made. Can you see without all of it falling out? So there's like sun gold tomatoes from the garden. There's blueberries. There's a few cucamelons and nori wraps, and that's what we serve for lunch. And some days it gets all eaten and some days it doesn't. I think the big thing to remember is to have those conversations with your kids, because sometimes it's not because they didn't love the lunch, and a lunch that they loved 2 weeks ago, now they're just like, it is really sort of normal. But having those conversations on the weekend is really helpful. Let's talk a little bit more about variety. So we mentioned just sort of turning something from like a sandwich into a wrap, into a skewer, or into a bagel. That's a really great way. A snack plate is another great way. You can sort of like decompose what you might put in a sandwich. And so like the hummus becomes a dip with the toast fingers, and then like the veggies are on the side, or like the little cheese is on the side. You can also do shapes. It's a bit cutesy. I don't do this every once in a while, but if you've got a little bit of time, like a big, like cute cookie cutter, you can cut out the sandwich, and that's always really fun. Like every once in a while, just for a little bit of a surprise kind of thing, like that surprise factor. The other thing I wanted to mention, because someone specifically asked about for the too busy to eat kids, so snack style lunches are really great. What about pouches? So I have to admit, and we don't have as many pouches here as in the US, but like fruits and veggie pouches, even the ones that are made for like little toddlers, it's pure fruits and vegetables. There's no sugar added, nothing. We used to call them smoothie packs. So in a pinch, that makes a great snack, particularly for younger kids. Older school age kids might not be into that kind of thing, but smoothies can be another really good option too. The one thing to remember about smoothies is you want to keep them cold, and not all smoothies really hold up well, but if it's in a sort of thermos, like a cold keeping thermos that they're not looking through anyways, it's just like, you know, you can put a little like post-it note, like shake me, so they shake it and drink it. You want to avoid things that are going to gel a lot. So like blueberries are delicious, but blueberries will often gel quite a bit. So you want less gelling fruits and veggies. And then you can actually get like a plant-based protein powder in there if you're interested, or you can do something like hemp hearts. Use soy milk if you're not soy allergic. There's like 7 grams of protein per cup in a cup of soy milk. People forget that. For kids, that's a meaningful protein source. So I think we covered all of the questions. I mean, there's so much more that we could talk about. So I want to say thank you for tuning into the live. Like I said, this is going to be up, and if you're watching it like an hour from now, you're already watching this on the IGTV. So it'll be up there. I'll share it in my stories. I want to say thank you again to Silver Hills Bakery. This is their little brig bread, which is really great for tiny appetites because it's a little bit lighter. This is the thing that we've been eating for far more than 15 years, more than a decade in our house. This is what my kids grew up on, and I just love any, like I've said, I'm a real deal parent. Like any simple swap I can take to instantly make my diet or my kids' diet healthier, I'm all about. And so it's been this swap that stayed with us for so long. So have an incredible day. If your kids aren't in school yet, enjoy these last 2 weeks or count the days until school starts. Depends what you're vibing on. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again here very soon.